Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Crypto My God. Today we talk about crime and punishment, something that has been very much on the upswing over the past 4 years and is now taking a most interesting turn. But just before we hop into it, there's something that's really interesting and very closely related to yesterday's tube, which is that the Ethereum Foundation has found competition. There is something called the Second Foundation that was announced just this morning. This is Konstantin Lomashuk, everybody. He's a great guy. I've been involved in DAOs with him. Founder of P2P Network, which was a major mining network, still is, I shouldn't say was, and also the founder of Lido, the biggest liquid staking token on the Ethereum blockchain. So this guy really knows his stuff. He's been involved in the Ethereum ecosystem for a long time, major ETH maxi, and extreme contributor to the cause. So this is really exciting. He came out last night, basically Second Foundation. You can see not much has been built here, but we're really excited to see that it is no longer solely reliant on the Ethereum Foundation. As I covered yesterday, there's a whole bunch of infighting going on and a lot of agitation and exhaustion from the broader community around how they've been handling it, sort of their views on the political leanings of the ecosystem itself versus the technical developments. It's very exciting to see a second foundation come out. I think this is the ethos of a decentralized asset. We've seen a lot of growth in the Bitcoin ecosystem of different players coming in. There's been infighting, there's been change, and now Bitcoin seems to be marching along quite nicely. We want to see something similar with Ethereum that clearly consolidated around the foundation, has lost some of its lead against Solana, and now we're seeing a second fire come out of the entire ecosystem. To me, again, people have asked, what does this mean for ETH, the asset price? I don't really care about prices. I think everyone buys the assets at the price they deserve. But what this does mean for Ethereum is a bit of inspiration. It feels as though we are at an asset bottom. Truth be told, the technology on Ethereum has been growing tremendously. We have massively new high throughput chains launching on top of it. We have Eigenlayer building what is basically an Amazon Web Services. I will eventually get to all of these things. There's just been so much topical news that I've had a hard time going back in time to discuss things. Now, I'd like to hop into the topic of today, crime and punishment, and how we're seeing it. So Trump has come out, and he had always promised to the Bitcoin community that he would free Ross Ulbricht on day one. We saw yesterday, first day of the presidency, I guess to some degree, there was the swearing in, and yesterday was the action part, but he did come true on his promise, and he freed Ross. I think something interesting about Ross Ulbricht is that when I got into Bitcoin very early on, the Silk Road was an extremely active place. Many of the early Bitcoiners that I know personally who gained massive wealth and success came from two places. One, selling drugs on the Silk Road or doing something to that effect, or two, playing online poker. Both of these internet communities relied on Bitcoin because it was a very early and easy way to move value. So people that wanted to both bet on poker games or to purchase drugs had to go out and find ways to buy Bitcoin. At this point in time, I want to say Bitcoin was, maybe $20 or less. There's a really good NPR podcast where they have to go and buy some to purchase things off the Silk Road. But Ross Ulbricht took on the name the Dread Pirate Roberts. He was a very funny tweeter back in the day, and he ran the Silk Road. What's really important to note, and thank you to Ben Sigman at BenSig for putting this together, is that Ross himself didn't actually sell drugs. He built this anonymous and open platform called Silk Road. It was built on top of the Tor network, which is something that actually was a gift given to us by the US government itself. They've admitted to building Tor as a reliable way for them to have some sort of protections on the internet. Now, what was really interesting is that the Silk Road really was a place to buy apparel, arts, books, collectibles, computer equipment, sure, and then there were drugs. And one of the fascinating things about it was a pretty effective marketplace. There was not a lot of violence happening. People were really coordinating and selling these illicit materials, but we didn't see, the fentanyl craze. And of course, things start out a little bit mid and they always get hot and heavy. And at some point, and this narrative really does come, I think, from the opposition in Ross's case, there was some attempts at, murder for hire assassins on the internet. Now, did that ever really pick up? Did the cases against Ross ever come full circle on that? No, these were failed attempts. And I actually know some of the people in the FBI that were involved with taking down Ross. So it was a pretty epic way that they captured him. They found him at a library. They needed his laptop open. So they actually faked an argument adjacent to Ross, causing him to leave his laptop, run away. That's when they pounced on it, got the computer, and proceeded. Now, the thing to really note is that Ross seems to have gotten a very heavy-handed sentencing in what was building essentially a free and open bit of computer code. Obviously, this computer code facilitated an illegal marketplace, so it's like a very easy jump from one to the next. But at the end of the day, he was the manager of the website. He wasn't doing the drug deals. He wasn't directly involved hands-on with some of the more illicit activities. Furthermore, the sentencing judge herself said that due to his privilege of position, he was actually given an even harsher sentence than, let's say, he was peddling drugs on the street. Now, Ross was given 2 life sentences for this. 2 life sentences. Up until yesterday, he was absolutely convinced he was going to die in jail. And the reason behind this is not because he launched this network or this marketplace built on top of the web. It's more so that this was one of the first places to employ the use of Bitcoin. And as a result, Ross was absolutely used as a figurehead in the anti-crypto movement very early on. Now, of course, we're seeing Bitcoin evolve to become a more mature asset. It's being talked about by the head of BlackRock, Larry Fink, at Davos just earlier a couple hours ago. And obviously things are cooling and the industry is trying to gain favor. And we're seeing now political sort of forgiveness for Ross. So this is all a really big deal and really interesting. The community is very happy that Ross has been free. He has been in prison for the past 11 years. I think most people in crypto do not even know who he is anymore. But that brings me to whom I want to talk about, which is a friend of mine and someone who's a neighbor and very close to my heart. And this is Roman Storm. Roman Storm is one of the founders of Tornado Cash. So what Tornado Cash is an Ethereum mixing protocol. Basically, it takes ETH transactions in bulk and it blends them with a massive amount of other Ethereum transactions. So think of a bunch of transactions entering into a mixer, shake it with a bunch more transactions, and then at the other side comes out more ETH. So you're paying a little bit of ETH to go through this giant transaction funnel. The idea is that it's like that cup game, right, with the ball under the cup and you move it around so quickly that you can't quite tell, and it remixes those and puts Ethereum out. At its core, this is a mechanism to maintain privacy, financial privacy, and the right to move assets without surveillance. That was the core idea behind Tornado Cash. Now, the thing to note is that the 2 developers, Roman and Alex, were responsible for writing and deploying the contract. But in classic Ethereum fashion, they subsequently burned the keys to manage the program, and basically it's out in the world. What's really important to keep in mind is that writing code is essentially writing down math. The difference is when you put it in a book or on a piece of paper, it does require a human brain to execute, right? Language is code, code is language. That's why the printing press was such a hot topic back in its release. And that's why executable code in open source is also proving to be a very tough reality in conflict with our First Amendment rights. We are just writing down math and allowing a computer to hit the .exe run. So now at the core of all of this is an issue around cryptocurrency mixing services, the way they operate, and in Roman's case, it's really detailed legal minutia about the responsibility and the central role of the launcher, how they do it, how much control they have over it, do they have financial gain out of the product? This is all the oversight that would put somebody into a position of responsibility. And what Roman is trying to argue is that no, this is not the case. He just wrote open source code. This is a First Amendment battle, and that he should not be held liable because the platform itself just self-operates. So to dive into it, we have a really great presentation here that just sort of sums it up. My name is Roman Storm. I'm one of the founders of Tornado Cash, a non-custodial privacy protocol. Again, at the core of this is privacy over our financial transactions. Let's keep in mind that blockchain used in a non-private way is a fully transparent financial ecosystem, which can be levered against its users to track everything that they spend capital on. You can also attach a reputation score to this, and in the vein of the Chinese social credit, you can penalize people for vices, you can reward them for spending spending in the method that the government deems positive. Now, we do not want this. This is a very dystopian outcome. The charges against me threaten to criminalize software development itself. If successful, the implications could extend far beyond the crypto industry, impacting every software developer. I face up to 45 years in prison on charges including operating an unlicensed money transmitting business, conspiracy to commit money laundering, and sanctions evasion. Now, what's really interesting here is this unlicensed money transmission business. Again, money transmission and many of the things in traditional financial regulations come down to the intermediaries, who is, accepting cash with the right hand, sending it off with the left. The thing about blockchain is it has no intermediaries. It uses programs to programmatically execute on predetermined agreements. And in this defense, Roman is trying to say, I don't operate an unlicensed money transmitting business. I don't have anything to do with that. The code facilitates it on its own. This is coming from the Department of Justice against Roman himself. Now, as we go farther into it, this case has already had a chilling effect on developers working on software tools. And you can follow this tweet. I'll put it in the reference post if you want to dive in. But this is true. This is why over the Biden administration, we have seen developers moving away towards places like Singapore, towards Dubai, basically wanting to leave the US because of a fear of reprisal for whatever they put out on the internet. Now, all of this vastly extends to the open source development of artificial intelligence right now, with the government trying to get a heavy hand into saying, we are scared that this super technology will be built out in public and we won't have backdoors. That's what this comes down to, is control and backdoors. What's also very interesting is ghost guns. They're a similar process, right? They're just data that can be shared on the internet and, of course, printed out on a 3D printer to create something very real and very lethal. He goes on. Additionally, there is a significant confusion around the 1960 charge, operating an unlicensed money transmitter business. And as you can see here, different government agencies have conflicting interpretations of the law. So that's very interesting, and it continues to unpack. He's also citing Vivek Ramaswamy that says you can't go after the developers of code. What you actually need to do is go after the individual bad actors who are breaking the laws that already exist. So a lot of what brought this up was the idea that Tornado Cash was being used by North Korea, by Iran, as a way to obfuscate their funding. And that, again, is not really something that Roman or Alex sat on top of. This is something that anyone can access inside of the Tornado Cash application. So this is really important because Roman's been going up against this. It's been absolutely terrifying. He does have children, and his entire life is basically going up against this trial, which is set for April 14th. 2025. And it's extremely important to the industry itself, as it represents and responds to how we develop code, how we launch it in a decentralized format. And do keep in mind, over the past few years, that word decentralization has never been formally defined. So it's not something that could be reproducible. You can see how the fear of Roman's outcome actually spreads throughout the entire industry, basically making anyone that's writing code that touches some sort of financial application, and we're talking blockchain, money is the first application that happens on this, being at risk of being a sort of fiduciary or some sort of financial intermediary. So it's all very, very scary. Now, as Roman does approach his trial, one thing that's very important to note is that his partner in the development, Alex Pertsev, he was actually arrested by Dutch authorities a long time ago. So this was back in 2022, right? Following the August 2022 sanctions imposed by Tornado Cash. And he's actually been in jail, and the Dutch authorities have not provided him the appropriate due process. He's been kind of kept in the dark, in silence, and is very uncertain about what his fate looks like as well. So this is a global thing. For anybody that want to learn a little bit more, this is Justice DAO. They are raising funding to help. And to my chagrin, they are less than 40% up to their legal defense fund support. So for anyone who's been through it, legal defense is extremely expensive. It's extremely terrifying. You don't know what the outcome is. You're responsible and liable for all of it yourself. He assumes that in a case against the DOJ, they need about $2 million in legal fees. I would love to see the crypto community, who has done gangbusters in meme coins and a variety of other fairly light wins, donate to this. But again, it's unfortunately pretty slow. So this is something to look forward to if you want to contribute, if you've maybe made gains in the ecosystem and you feel like giving back. This is about fundamental rights, and this is as core to the ethos of cryptocurrency as you can get. I want to point out even more so that Vitalik Buterin himself, the founder of Ethereum, is very much on top of this. He says here in this post, no man left behind. Roman Storm, here in this post, he says, no man left behind. Roman Storm and Alex Pertsev next. Tornado Cash itself won an important case today. And, Roman follows up. I just want to let everyone know that Vitalik Buterin is a true warrior who has been trying to help Alexei and me for the past 2.5 years since it all began. So Vitalik even continues, you created Tornado in a significant part because of my suggestion that it was something worth building. It would violate basic honor for me to do that and then to fail to support you in your hour of need. In Ethereum, we protect our own and uphold our honor, Milady. Now, Milady is actually this profile picture that he has, and that's a whole interesting sub-community for another topic. But you can tell when someone puts a Milady profile picture on their Twitter, they're in wartime mode and they will probably cuss and be a little more aggressive, and it's the fuck it attitude that you're really getting from a Milady. So this is really interesting. You can tell that Vitalik brought forth the idea of Tornado Cash, again, focusing on the privacy of financial interactions. Ethereum itself is not private. There is a very clear trail of who's purchasing and transacting on what. And the idea that we need to increase privacy is something that is consistently being thought about. Now, one really interesting outcome that also occurred in this past 24 hours is that the courts lift the OFAC sanctions on Tornado Cash, marking a major win for crypto privacy advocates. This means that for the past, 2 years, there's been this OFAC sanction on Tornado Cash. It would be very dangerous as a US user to go to that website and to toss money into it. It's basically saying you're laundering money for terrorists. They have now found that due to the open source nature of the protocol, it is no longer responsible in any way, shape, or form. It is the decentralization. And it is now being seen that due to the open source nature of it, the decentralization is sufficient that they are conceding that this is no longer something worthy or requiring of OFAC sanctions. So this is a really interesting outcome. They're finding that the protocol itself is being liberated. The question around Roman and Alex themselves will really have to do with how they launched it, how the initial keys, right, the control of the protocol were managed. They did burn the keys. They basically said, we no longer have the key to this house. The house stands, it operates on its own, it's full of Roombas and everything's automatic. So this all continues to unpack, and we're moving in a really interesting direction of not only the liberation of the crypto they could be villains to one side, heroes to another. I think these are people that are just trying to build technology under a new paradigm. It's a very scary paradigm. It challenges the way that finance works, the concept of money, what is money, and how do we all engage with it in this new digital age, especially as digital and reality begin to merge together very much. So I'm very passionate about this, and I will keep my followers very up to date on what's happening here. This is extremely crucial to the foundational layer of the cryptocurrency industry, which is the willingness of developers to actually make stuff on this tech. Obviously, if you have a family, if you have a life, even if you're young and single, you might not want to go to jail. You might not want to risk it. You might not be such an ideologue that you want to go down the path. I mean, we saw Aaron Swartz commit suicide after releasing troves of gated scientific data behind the academic system. There's all very big risks involved with dealing with information in an open and free way, but it is very interesting to see that we are getting some wins, that some of the greatest champions of data privacy and freedom are finding their way out of the hole. And with that, it's an exciting new time for builders. Hopefully this gives an open license along with the new regulation committee from the SEC to build things on blockchains inside the United States of America that prove fruitful, that have utility, and that can share their value with the network participants. That's the core of this all. And of course, privacy, because that's a hard thing to maintain in a digital world. So everybody, crypto's a nutso place to exist. Have some luck out there. So everybody, with that, I sign off. Crypto is an insane industry to exist in, so best of luck to you, and have a great day.